Yes, good people. Welcome into Numbers Don't Lie, powered by Sofascore. Of course, I'm your boy, JayDee Dyer, accompanied by my dog, Michael Lahoud. And listen to this headline. Man United, stunners in the building. Back-to-back wins against the top two teams in the Premier League. And we open up the conversation with, is Michael Carrick the right man to resurge them this year? Make sure you get involved in the comments, because the man has taken over Old Trafford and taking it back to its golden days in just 2 games, Mike. But is he the right man to steer them back to glory this season?
Yeah, he's definitely looking like it so far, right? When you beat Manchester City in the Manchester Derby in the way that they did, okay, you got my attention. But to go to the Emirates, to beat the unstoppable, unbeatable, not so more Arsenal, then the conversation has to be moving in that direction.
Mike, when you turn around and break this down, Mike to a Mike, Michael Carrick has never lost as Man United caretaker manager. You can see some of the big results that he's had, though. United, of course, against Arsenal twice in there, the Man City derby you just alluded to, the Chelsea 1-1, and the Villarreal. Of course, this is over 10 years, so to break us down in terms of to understand what Michael Carrick's doing. But on the pitch, the energy, the vibes, what Man United are doing in terms of their fluidity, he just seems to have a different pulse on this team right now.
Yeah, he really does. And a lot of talk's been talked about getting back to the Manchester United DNA as we look at what he's done. I mean, to go to the Emirates, to beat Arsenal at their place, you look at the names, you look at these storied managers. Champions League winner, right? This guy brought Ajax to a Champions League semi-final. Jose Mourinho, Champions League winner. Michael Carrick at the top of that list in terms of rattling the vibes at the Emirates and amongst Arsenal fans, JD? Come on now.
I like it. I'm going to give you a little one, too, because that's exactly what Man United were doing within that game. But I want to break it down and just understand, is this the right person to turn around and bring them back to the glory years? Man United have been waiting for a long while. When you say 2015, this has been the managers that have been steering the ship and, to say, steering it potentially unsuccessfully. Is Michael Carrick the right person, what you've seen in the couple opening games?
In my opinion, Michael Carrick will end up being the right person, because for all the tactics that these, former managers tried to instill in the team, the one thing about Manchester United that makes it Manchester United is the fans, right? Michael Carrick is putting together performances, putting a team out on the pitch that's making Manchester United fans believe again, giving hope and giving this energy, this resilience, this passion on the pitch and within the fan base that makes them think that, okay, top 4, it's a reality, but 12 points out? What do you think, JD?
I mean, I think he's... I'm so sorry, Man United, man. Let me get my professional hat on for a second. I think the odds are very slim in terms of to put themselves back into the title chase, but it gives you in terms of the right energy and what's being created right now in terms of at Manchester, because there was an element of, I would say, the old Man United there, the fluid round the corner football, the being brave on the front foot, players looking free and fluid in the final third. So there is something that he's doing that's creating an element of chemistry, but I'm going to put it back to you, Lahoud. Is this the right direction? Is this where Man United want to be going? And is top 4 their goal this year now?
Yeah, look, we're a numbers show, right? So the football that they're playing, I'm going to bump that percentage up from 1.8 to maybe 10%, because that's the sort of football that they played at the Emirates, baby. But let's, jokes aside, we're going to get into the tactics, because I love tactics and also love numbers. This is a 19-pass sequence, and this is Arsenal's midfield, and look at the boxes, right? You talk about the fluidity. Patrick Dorgu unlocked, but the key is Bruno Fernandes. Every time Bruno Fernandes gets the ball, look at the space and look at the yardage. 5 yards amongst players in between them. It's almost like they're playing rondo. I remember there's a clip that I saw against City. It was Bruno Fernandes in the middle, and then Arsenal's midfielders also doing the same as Manchester City. Look at how many players. 3 players converge on Bruno, but the rest of the players now, they're getting wide. Kobe Manu, who's a defensive midfielder, he has the freedom to go out wide, and other players getting into spaces. Now, the fluidity is going to be the thing that I really want to harp on, because I remember this as a player, right? When you're a talented player, you want to be able to express yourself. You have to have the fluidity. And Patrick Dorgu, as we see, he's going to end up being almost like a second center forward. And oftentimes, he's playing maybe as that second forward. But Casemiro as well, given the license to come, look at this run, JD. Dorgu's going to go blindside for Arsenal. And oftentimes, the 2 center backs for Arsenal, they were chasing shadows, because they didn't know, with so much attention paid on Bruno Fernandes, and he almost could have scored that. Takes it with his right boot. That's a goal. With so much attention on Fernandes, it freed up spaces for the rest of the team to thrive.
No, I know you want to talk about the goal, but I want to definitely make hark as we go into the fluidity, because the fluidity, I think, is what Man United have unlocked in these last two games. It makes defenders really difficult in terms of the track. That move that you're talking about from Dorgu not being restricted in terms of to a wing position, wanting to come inside and make himself an alternative, his dynamic behaviour, his touch in the final third now, and more importantly, the confidence that's been installed in him was, I think, has been testament to what Man United's revolution has been over these last two games. But you mentioned one key player. Bruno Fernandes is unlocked. I mean, who thought about it, right? Putting one of the best 10s in world football in the 10 position. I don't know what genius did that, but Michael Carrick seems to have unlocked something within his captain right now, and he seems to be leading from the front.
Yeah, look, Bruno also got an assist in this match, and we're going to see the Patrick Dorgu goal, because going back to being connected to Bruno, everything is around Bruno Fernandes, and maybe I didn't break the wall there as I said it. So it's Rondo yet again. I mean, they're bopping the ball around the corner. Declan Rice, Martin Zubamendi, and Martin Odegaard, less said about him, the better in terms of that performance. They didn't know where to go and mark Bruno, and when they committed so many numbers forward, it left space for Dorgu to go. Patrick Dorgu would have never been in this position under Ruben Amorim. He would have been out here, right? And so now you're giving that sense of freedom. It's paying dividends for United.
I think when you have to break it down is, and I want to look at Michael Carrick's playing career, this is literally Michael Carrick's whole playing career. The passes around the corner, the short 5-yard passes, the balls around the corner, and also, more importantly, the passing in between the lines to unlock those key players. He was doing it throughout his whole career while he was so successful at Man United. He's now translated that into his footballing style as a coach. And if you really took note on what he did at Middlesbrough, it really doesn't pay any sort of surprises. Yeah, the industry is there in terms of the tackles and the duels and the ball recoveries, but watch Middlesbrough's football. There was a reason why over his tenure they had scored the most amount of goals in the Championship, and when that decided to flounder, of course his tenure decided to flounder. But at the same point, I want to turn man and heart back on the football that he was doing, which was dynamic, which was short, which was quick. It had that speed and it had intention, and that's what I've seen over Man United over these last 180 minutes.
I've really seen a difference, right? Because Manchester United were getting exposed in the middle of the park before under Ruben Amorim. When you only have two defensive midfielders, you had Fulham, right? Where Marco Silva said, we knew what to do. We need to just get more numbers in there and we can beat them in transition. Now United, they're flooding and overloading the middle of the park. All the goals just about came from overloads in the middle of the park. Maybe the gift to Mbomo, but it's all about Bruno Fernandes, right? I'm going to say this. When we talk about the best midfielders in the Premier League, the best is not Declan Rice. The best is not Moises Caicedo. The best is Bruno Fernandes. For me, it's Bruno, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah,
the numbers don't lie, JD. The man is leading the Premier League in assists, right? The man, I'm going to give you this, right? All these numbers here. Bruno Fernandes is the second fastest player in Premier League history to get to 200 goal contributions. The only other player ahead of him, Kevin De Bruyne. You're not saying that about any other midfielder in the Premier League right now. He's world class, and without him, had Manchester United gone through what they're going to go through of selling him, I would just really be afraid to see where the club would be.
I won't say that your statement about Bruno Fernandes is wrong, but what I will say is that when you really think about the difference in the freedom that he now has and should have as a number 10, I think it's difficult to compare to the Arsenal midfielder Declan Rice or even the Chelsea midfielder Moises Caicedo. But there was another team that was involved in this game, right? And that is, of course, the Premier League leaders right now in Arsenal. And people are questioning whether or not they had the discipline, whether or not they have the consistency, and more importantly, the mentality to see out this Premier League season. And Man United have upset the apple cart. There's no two ways about it. They've showcased something in terms of a weakness within them. But in order to be a weakness, you have to also identify that they had an element of strength. And Arsenal have built a lot of their strength, of course, on their defensive stability. Now, this record is impressive in its own right. 83 games in terms of not conceding more than 3 goals in over 10 years. That's how long we've been taking these stats back to. But I would also say, when you start to look a little bit deeper, I think there's an element of fatigue coming in. Now, maybe not a fatigue in terms of Mikel Arteta and his players, but maybe a physical fatigue, because since the Villa loss, look how many goals Arsenal have conceded in the 80th minute onwards. That tells me it's more of a mental thing or a physical thing in terms of the exertion that's on there. Now, you couple that with the injuries that they've had most recently, the struggle in terms of consistency in that back four, I think things are starting to unravel a little bit for Arsenal, and they need to go back to what their foundation was at the beginning of the season.
I'm a big proponent that the mind follows, and then the body comes with it, right? I think the fatigue we're starting to see is a mental fatigue because this is a group, for the large part, that's been together. There's a sense of deja vu I'm starting to see. I mean, you go back to the Carabao Cup, they had that match in hand. Now they've made it a match with conceding goals late. I agree with that, but it's not just defensively, JD, it's in the other end, offensively as well. The biggest question I have right now, when it's tight, when you're in a difficult position, how are the goals and who's going to score the damn goals, JD? I mean, you look at this, it's not good enough. I'm going to give you some background numbers to this. 1 goal in the Premier League from, let's say, the last 11 matches, right? You have Gabriel Martinelli, 1 goal in his last 13 Premier League matches. Not good enough. And the leader within the team since December is own goals. You're going to put more money on own goals if you're Arsenal, if you're trying to bet, than the rest of the team and then these attackers to get goals.
See, this is where my teammate decides he wants to be sly, right, and be sensible in terms of breaking it down. Victor Gyökeres, no excuses. In terms of only 1 goal from open play, I can understand that breakdown. Gabriel Jesus has just come back from a long-term injury and has actually looked incredibly sharp since he's come back. Gabriel Martinelli, how many games has he started with in that period of time? Leo Trossard has led Arsenal in terms of goals in the Premier League this year, so it's understandable why he struggled to get any appearances, because he might only be having cameos of 2 to 10 minutes. So I would say, and he didn't even feature yesterday, if I remember correctly, in terms of any point throughout the game. So I would caveat and say, yes, Arsenal do have a deficiency in terms of creativity. They do have a deficiency in terms of sometimes being too rigid and robust. But at the same time, understand that when you have components of all goal scorers coming from different avenues, that's not a bad thing, because you've seen the adverse, which is Man City having a world-class striker in Erling Haaland. But when Haaland's not flowing, the rest of the team seems to struggle. I think you have to find a fine balance. There needs to be more from Arsenal, but at the same time, an over-reliance is not a good thing either. Yeah,
look, I still have doubts and question marks because until Arsenal show me something different from a leadership standpoint, I mean, right now before the Manchester United game, look at the odds. Over 75% odds to win the Premier League, right? I was buying that. Okay, maybe the Forest match, not their best performance. Liverpool, you could say Liverpool didn't create much of anything, but let's look at what happened after the final whistle and how things changed. I think that 69% is damn generous because we've seen this movie before. So my big thing, right? Yeah. And sometimes the numbers do lie and sometimes the numbers don't. I would love to see the numbers on the boos and the tension and the anxiety at the Emirates right now. Arsenal fans are feeling it. If I was to give a 9 out of 10 or out of 10 in terms of nerves, I would say right now the nerves are just getting to 6 or 7 right now for Arsenal fans. So it's on them to change this around.
I'll tell you what my therapist says all the time, right? Forget the traumas from yesterday, focus on what's happening today. So Arsenal fans need to forget about what's happened in the past and maybe focus on the fact that they still are leading the Premier League right now. But forget about that. The call to action is to you. Do you believe that Arsenal will be able to see this out, looking at the next 3 fixtures and everything else that's going to come down to this Premier League season? Will Arsenal be crowned champions? You tell us.
Welcome to CBS Sports presents Numbers Don't Lie, powered by Sofascore, the show where we talk the biggest names in the biggest games. And we're going to have a conversation about something we've been talking about, JD. Who is the best winger in the world? I know we can think of a couple names, but there's one name in particular that I'm thinking about, Michael Olise. Where does he stack up in terms of the best wingers in the world, JD?
You know where he is. Born in northwest London, raised in South London, and now for the world to see how great he is. As Chris Brown would say, he's sensational. And I really do think he is the best winger in world football because you combine that incisive dribbling in terms of being able to skip past anybody on the inside. You know what he's about to do and you just can't stop it. And now you combine that with the creativity, the playmaking ability, and more importantly, the finishing touch that he has. Michael Olise is on a completely different plateau right now. And I'm so glad he's getting an opportunity to showcase what he can do around other world-class talent, but most importantly, on the biggest stages.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this because, I mean, the numbers literally do not lie with this. The goals that he's been a part of, I mean, you could take it from every single match just about. I know a couple Bayern fans were a little critical of him. I think in November he went through, by his standards, a small patch, a lull patch. But, I mean, this guy is playing out of his mind, JD. I mean, when we look further into the numbers, I mean, what about him? Is it the shots? Is it the dribbles? Or is it even further?
It's the fact that he does this. It's the silent assassin. He does no talking and just makes sure that he does all of his talking on the pitch. And I think about all of these other players, right? I hear a lot from him in terms of most recently about his growth and his own personal development. I hear a lot from him in terms of wanting to be the leader of his team. You know, we always hear a conversation around Mason Greenwood. And And Lamine Yamal, I always feel like he's always one tweet away from turning and shaking the whole world up. But this guy right here, just silence. Goes and does his business on the pitch, even in his post-match interviews. You're lucky if you get more than 5 words, because the gift is not the gab, it's in the feet. And I love the fact that he just does it on a consistent basis right now. We've seen the glimpses at Crystal Palace. We already knew what he could do coming for the Chelsea Academy, but now you can see him on the biggest stages around other world-class talent, people who understand his mentality. Oh, he's not just going to be shining for club, he's going to be shining for country. 2026 is going to be a breakout year for Michael Olise.
Yeah, well, it's been a breakout here on Numbers Don't Lie and Sofascore as well. I mean, he is the only player that's earned himself a perfect score 3 times, right? No other player has done that in this season. I mean, you look at the other players in Europe's top 5 leagues that are in that conversation. Harry Kane, he did that. Kylian Mbappe, okay, he did that. Harry Wilson, Eze, the hat trick in the North London derby. Anthony as well, CDK. But I remember this match against Leipzig. He actually came off the bench to get 3 assists and a goal in a match that Bayern just against RB Leipzig. But as we talk more about Michael Olise, we had seen the names that he's in the conversation with, right? You'd mentioned Mason Greenwood. You'd mentioned Rafinha. But when we talk about other wingers in world football, there's only one other winger I'm thinking about right now that plays on that same side with Michael Olise that we need to compare him with, right? Lamine Yamal. Because Michael Olise is doing it in the Bundesliga, but Lamine Yamal has been doing it, you know, since last year and even this year. But when we look at the numbers overall, I mean, where does he stack up on this graph?
I mean, look, the goals and the assists, you can see that he's obviously going to rank so high because he's not just contributing, but he's contributing consistently. That word consistent is a defining factor, because I've always said that he's had the ability, but now when you start seeing him against some of his peers, who I think Ryan Cherki is incredible. Lucho Diaz, we've already spoken in terms of high praise. Rafinha, we already know in terms of the goals or what he contributes. But this is what I'm looking at here. And you know what I love about these 2 players? They give me the eye test. They give me the feel. They give me the vibe that I haven't had since, let's say, the turn of 2000, where they make me sit on the edge of my seat and I'm sitting there wondering, what are they going to do next? It doesn't seem like they have a scripted play. And I love the fact that both of their managers give them an element of freedom. Go and be the best version of yourself. Be dynamic in the final third. And more importantly, I trust you to make the right decisions. All that's happened in Olise's game is he's always had this ability. But now, finally, he's putting it all together and doing it on a consistent basis. And that decision-making has gone to another level. And yet, now you're seeing why he's in the conversation. And I definitively will say he is the best winger in world football.
I love that, and I stand by it. I back it. Now, this is a big year for both club and country, as you'd mentioned. But when we have this discussion about the best wingers in world football, I want to have another discussion, right? An elevated discussion, an educated discussion about who is a Ballon d'Or candidate. In my opinion, Michael Olise should be in the conversation for the Ballon d'Or. And so I want to throw this to you guys in the chat. And ultimately, JD, this is the conversation we're going to have. Is Michael Olise a true Ballon d'Or candidate? Because the numbers we saw there say he's in the chat, but are the numbers deeper than that, and should he be in the conversation?
Yes, he's in the conversation. What I will say is, you know what his season very much reminds me of? Remember that Iron Robin 2013, 2014 season? In a very similar shirt, I will say. And it was the excellence that he had. And it was the element of surprise and the consistency, again, of that amazing Robin season. But what they coupled it with was trophies. You need trophies. You need something that's going to stand you out. And unfortunately, this is going to be a positive on the pitch, but it's going to be a negative off the pitch. He has a teammate who's also in that conversation. And when you have a teammate who's a front runner, one of the best strikers in world football, and not too long ago, we were standing on this same set and saying he was a front runner for the Ballon d'Or in Harry Kane, it starts to add on, I wouldn't say deflate your argument, but at the same time, you recognize that this is a world-class team and he's got other assets with him as well.
So we look at, these are the assist records in each of the top 5 leagues, right? Kevin De Bruyne is what he's done. You know, Thomas Muller, what he's done. Michael Olise is almost in that conversation, right? And this is in the Bundesliga that has less games than the Premier League and other people. But we got to talk about the GOAT, Lionel Messi. And I know Lionel Messi is in a league of his own, but when it comes to creativity, Michael Olise, he's in that conversation for me because the numbers aren't too far off from the career averages. And, of course, this season, he's on a rocket ship, JD. So when we compare it, I mean, is he having a Messi-like season in terms of creativity and dish and assists?
Let's just time out for 1 second. And this is no shade on my boy Michael Olise, but I need you to come and zoom in on this. Look at this word right here. This, right, explains greatness over a prolonged period of time. 1.44 for a career average. Now, what I will say is when you look at Michael Olise, yeah, incredible season. But it's like when I hear it in basketball terms, when they compare SGA season to Michael Jordan, there's just levels to it, right? There's an understanding that this is the GOAT and this is someone who's having an incredible season. How you enter this conversation in terms of the Messi conversation is I need prolonged excellence.
Okay,
that's what I need. I need prolonged excellence.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Now we're going to compare him to a more comparable conversation, right? Because when we talk about Barcelona and we talk about that heir apparent to Lionel Messi, Lamine Yamal's definitely been in that chat last season. These are the numbers, right? And this season, these are the numbers across 50 games and 55 matches for both. I mean, we have a real conversation. So when we talk about who is the best winger of world football, these two come to mind, no?
Yes, they do. And I'll tell you now, he is not going to end up 30th in this Ballon d'Or rating because he's taken his game to another level. We've already discussed this. But remember I said to you that turn of the century when I started thinking about some of them wingers? I started thinking about Pavel Nedved. I started thinking about Luis Figo. I started thinking about Zinedine Zidane. Those attacking players that used to make you sit on the edge of the seat. These two are the front runners in world football right now. When I think about those players that get me excited, that make me rip up tactics, forget the coaching manuals, all the rest of it, they just can do excellence by themselves. They can change a complete game. But I want to know, where do you feel? When you look at these two right now and where they are going, do you think there's a little competition? You see the same way we have the competition about Haaland and Mbappe and Kane. Do you think these two are watching each other and recognizing in terms of, oh, there's a little something over there that I need to keep an eye on?
I mean, if we did, we're going to see Instagram story for this man right here, or maybe a tweet, because he's very active on social media. Well, we don't know where they're going to finish in the Ballon d'Or race. We definitely don't know yet where Michael Olise is going to finish in the Ballon d'Or race. It's sure as hell not going to be 30th place, or else we're going to write here on Numbers Don't Lie. But when we talk about transfer values, when we talk about money well spent, look at all these other players. $63 million for Michael Olise, to give you the numbers we just saw. But go through this, JD. I mean, teams overpaying? Mohamed Kudus, what's he even doing here?
I break it down and I would say the only person that's justified their value so far is Kvaratskhelia, because of course he's produced, and more importantly, he's produced trophies, right? So you can already say that he's returned his value. Antoine Semenyo, I love the story. I love the journey all the way from the National League all the way to now the pinnacle of the Premier League. Deserves all the plaudits, justified fee for his consistency and his greatness. Kudos, okay, we'll get into that conversation another time, but he's still got a World Cup and the end of the season to turn around and showcase what he can do. This is the part where I need Chelsea fans to look away, because Pedro Neto, Jamie Gittins, even Endrick, there's no way you can tell me that if your scouts were out here and Michael Olise was available for $63 million US, these you can justify. No way in hell. I'm telling you now, not a chance. Numbers do not lie when it comes to the transfer value, and Olise's return on value has been sensational.
Yeah, look, man, you can't argue with a Conference League trophy, right? I'll just say, no, I'm just kidding. Right? No, the numbers don't lie. I hope we're not lying, but we want to hear from you guys. Is Michael Olise the best winger in the world? And is he, or should he be, a Ballon d'Or candidate? You tell us.
Let's have a little bit of fun on Numbers Don't Lie, presented by Sofascore. Of course, it's Matchday 8, Champions League predictions. And, you know, usually we do this with the stats of the week and we kind of come out of it this way, but I actually want to have a little bit of fun, Mike. How about we start diving into what the Oracle says, right? Of course, we know how the final teams are going to be sort of shaping up in the final groups now as they go from the league stage to the knockout stages, but let's have a little bit of fun with the predictions, right? So let's have a look at the most probable top 8 first of all. These are the teams that have worked so hard across the first 7 games and rightfully so have deserved their places in terms of booking themselves in the top 8 to finish. Arsenal and Bayern have done their business really early. Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona, their kind of performances speak for themselves. And these 3 teams down here, I think have done really well. A couple blips here and there. You know what I mean? Bodo Glimt was one. That's one we can highlight. But Mike, when you look at overall, are you happy in terms of looking at the probable top 8?
Yeah, look, I think these are the best teams in European football when it comes to the Champions League and how they compete against the rest of the competition. The one caveat, though, is Thomas Frank, he's doing this. When he's thinking about the Champions League, because that's saving his job right now. And the numbers literally don't lie for Tottenham.
I like that. Numbers don't lie. North London, definitely there's some prayers going over there. But this is where we're going to have a little bit of fun. So let's dive into what the Oracle says, right? And this is 10,000 predictions done by a computer and our friends at Sofascore that have kind of shaken up in terms of the weighted simulations for what this top 8 could shape up like. So they're saying the most likely Champions League table will be Arsenal, Bayern, Real Madrid, Liverpool, PSG, Barcelona, Man City, and an Atleti. What's your thoughts in terms of when you look at all of the weighted simulations possible, this top 8 right here?
Yeah, look, I think you have some of the best players that you're going to see all across the Champions League competition. My one thing with Atleti is which Atleti is going to show up, right? The Atleti that Alexander Sorloth puts his team on his back, or the Atleti that needs Julian Alvarez to step up and get back in form. I mean, he's only got 1 goal in, let's just say, a long time. So if he comes good, they'll come good.
I like that. All right, we're going to switch gears really quickly. Let's have another look at some of these other teams that will be qualifying because, of course, you know, from 8 onwards is the teams that then go into those knockout games, right? Those quick playoffs, those in and outs. Atalanta's been one, I think, especially under Gasperini, has been a surprise. We already spoke about Thomas Frank. Inter, Chelsea, Sporting are a team that nobody should be sleeping on. Juventus. It's a little dark horse, and I was talking about shout out to the small teams coming in, utilising their debut season and knowing what they want to do in Paphos. And above them, Marseille, which I think is going to be a dark horse in terms of whoever they get at any point because of their attacking fluidity. But what's your makeup in terms of the rest of the table?
Yeah, look, we got to give Paphos some love, right? They beat Villarreal, who are in the top 4 of Spanish football right now. So there's a little bit of magic over there in the Mediterranean. But I agree with you. Don't sleep as well on Borussia Dortmund at home. I know they haven't been as convincing away, but at home in the Champions League, it's something to watch out for.
Shock against Borussia Dortmund, shout out. This guy has bleeds yellow and black all the way through. But then some of the teams that are going to be departing the competition according to the weighted simulations, I mean, this one right here screams a conversation. Scudetto champions, you already know what Antonio Conte is going to be like on the sideline. You're telling me that you don't see Napoli at this point progressing through?
No, I really don't. They're not deep enough to compete on multiple fronts. And I really have thought about this. A Napoli without Romelu Lukaku is no Napoli at all. I know they got Super Scott McTominay, putting the team on his back, but no David Neres for maybe the next 3 months. Get out of town.
I like this. All right, we're going to switch gears. So now let's talk about the possible matchups next in terms of the round of 16. So obviously some of the teams will naturally go through because they would have handled their business earlier, which will give them a better position against some of these teams that have to go into the playoffs. So if I said the Juventus versus Borussia Dortmund and a Bayer Leverkusen versus the Athletic Club, talk to me about how you see this sort of thing weighing out. This is an important game.
Yeah, look, I usually don't talk enough or about Juventus, right? But I'm going to start talking about them for this show and for this purpose. They're my dark horse right now because Luciano Spalletti, it is Spalletti ball. They look incredible. Go back and watch the 3-0 hammering they put, and it just really embarrassed Napoli at the weekend. And they have one of the best young stars of this competition, both in Italian football and in the Champions League, in Kenan Yildiz. And big shout out to Weston McKennie as well. USA.
Of course,
he's balling.
Boy, a shout out. Of course, the winners will play against an Arsenal Bayern team, so that's always going to be a difficult one. Let's switch gears really quickly and go into the next phase because I think some of the other playoff matchups I think are going to cause a few surprises. This one, Chelsea or Sporting, could be a potential matchup against, of course, Olympiacos or Galatasaray. First of all, historical connotation there. Crazy. Atmosphere there through the roof. But looking at how this sort of thing will weigh up, which one of these teams kind of stand out to you if they do potentially get Liverpool or Real Madrid?
I would love to see Chelsea. Can you imagine if you're Liam Rossinier, right? You go from playing against PSG in Liga, you know, the likes of a Monaco and all these other teams, and then you earn the right, because he will have earned the right after they beat Napoli, which I think they're going to do, to go and play, potentially, a Real Madrid. That's the stuff that you dream of when you get into management, but I still think Real Madrid will give Chelsea a run for their money. Transition will be the name of the game. Madrid could beat them.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to quote Liam Rossinier and say I'm really good at my job. We're going to see how good you are. Let's go into the next phase because I think some of these are some of the teams that people are sleeping on. When you look at some of the matchups down here, of course, Monaco and Inter are some of the two teams that you want to be seeing in the latter stages of any competition. Newcastle, they're a potential problem because of the physicality, because of maybe their starting 11 and how good they can be against anybody on their day. They've already had a test against Barcelona already, and we've seen what they can do in terms of weighing up man for man. A couple of magic moments from Marcus Rashford really separated the two teams. But looking at this overall, who's the dark horse in this for you?
Yeah, look, I think Inter, should they not get top 8, they would have to be considered the dark horse. But this is the state of Italian football right now. You have the league leader in Italian football maybe not getting top 8, the previous champion getting kicked out of the Champions League. I would love to see a rematch of the Champions League final because that was a moment that will live in infamy across all of Milan on the blue half, though. Not the red half, the blue half.
I do like that. Let's switch to the last bit because I like some of these potential matchups. Of course, the Champions League, the last group stage, we're going to get used to this. Atalanta versus Spurs, Paphos versus Marseille. This right here, I feel has something special in it, but I do want to give you a quick nudge. Since you gave Juventus your nudge in terms of a dark horse, you've shown some love to Borussia Dortmund. Atleti, for me, I think they're rounding off at the right moments. I mean, the Super Cup is one thing. We've already seen in terms of when they go to head-to-head against top teams what it can do. But I do believe, as you said earlier, if they can get some of those star strikers back, you get Julian Alvarez scoring against Sorloth, who we've seen on the weekend can do what he does. I do believe that they could cause a few upsets, not only to potentially one of those big teams like a Man City, but I think they're better than all of these teams in terms of how they shape up overall. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, defensively is where they will have the edge. And a man and a midfielder like Koke could be the difference. Pablo Barrios as well. But Julian Alvarez, without him, they're going to be on the couch with us watching the rest of the Champions League.
All right, I like it. Give us your dark horses because we've given you some of ours as the final game week of the Champions League is shaping up. And it's amazing, this new format, where we can see all of the league format top to bottom. But as we always say on this show, right, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. This has been us, and we out.